Alright, so this is gonna be a little bit different, so I'm doing a little discussion on the special concepts. If you haven't seen the videos, I might remember to link them in the description, but just check my main channel. They're gonna be pretty, close to this video's upload. So I went over, technically 6 returning specials, though you wouldn't include 2 of them, it's just I couldn't pick. 5 brand new ones, and then we have the 5 ones that I've also done a video fully explaining. And I wanted to talk about kind of my thoughts in retrospect, because obviously I've gone through and been very focused on making the videos, making the concepts and everything throughout this week, which has been very busy for me. So I wanted to kind of just take a look back now that I'm not in editing hell, finally, and just give my kind of thoughts and also address like a bit of what I saw YouTube people talking about. Not really any comments in particular, but just overall things. And while we're at it, you know, we're gonna rank them in a tier list, because why not? So, I want to start with the surfboard first. So everyone talked about the surfboard and thought it was like a very balanced good idea, and I do agree it is a very balanced good idea. However, I also think it's probably like either the best or the second best concept, like in terms of how good it would be. Realistically, like heavy weapons at octoburst speed and midweight weapons at like base ink rush speed a little bit less is kind of crazy. I think the main weapons that would benefit from this are splatlings. Splatlings and maybe some stuff like dually squelchers and stuff like that, but splatlings I think are the easiest. Because having that base mobility speed, both charging and firing being really high, would be crazy. Like, imagine a fucking Hydra with that thing. Would be devastating. Or a heavy, which would not have as much power, but it'd be a bit faster. A ballpoint would be insane with it. I think this is a special that benefits the Splatling class the most. I think Splatlings are made for this special, and I think that's kind of a good thing, because as I've talked about with my Perfect Kits thing, like, Bagel ended up giving Hydra a heavy baller, because nothing really fit what Hydra wanted in this game. Like, there wasn't anything that really fit it. And I think Splatlings as a class had 2 games now where they struggled to compete with other backline options. So I think the idea of a special that primarily benefits them is still fine. And I don't think it's unfair. Like, you can still shoot them or not peek a corner, whatever. Like, it still is very obvious counterplay. Something I didn't really mention, I thought I would get questions about it, is would the shield be, like, shoot-throughable like Umbrella? And I haven't really picked, but I would say yeah, I think it would be fair, because it's a very weak shield. But I think this is a very cool concept. But I think it would be really good. I think people are saying it would be very balanced, and I do think it would be balanced, but I don't think it would be, like, middle of the pack. I think it would be at the top. Likewise is the bomb launcher. So, I brought up some of these specials to a few other competitive players, mainly Bagel and Pika. Talked with me about a few of them while I was making them. And this is the one that they felt would be, like, I believe both of them felt the multi-bomb launcher would be really special. Would be really good. Can you briefly explain how the surf special works? Think you are an ink brush, but you can shoot. And then it flips and mini shield when it's done. If you haven't, check out my YouTube channel, someone can exclamation point YouTube, and you'll see full in-depth explanations. But that's basically the surfboard. It is like you get to ride a surfboard that can roll anywhere like an ink brush and fire. So the bomb launcher deluxe. This is probably my favorite concept because originally I'm not a fan of bomb launcher. I know a lot of competitive players, or maybe not a lot, but I know there are some who think it's actually a really good special, but I honestly don't agree. I don't think it's broken or anything like design-wise, but I think it's just very average. What I don't like is I feel like it's very spammable, and I don't think there's too much depth to it. The throwing range helped, but I don't think it was enough. So I always knew one of these specials was going to be a multi-use bomb launcher. That was always the core concept. But the problem I ran into when making this is, holy shit, dude, if you get access to, like, all the good bombs in one special, we have just buffed the crap out of it. So, I wanted to add 2 restrictions. I wanted 1, to make it so people couldn't spam one bomb and had to switch, so people couldn't just use only suction launcher for paint, for example. Or only burst launcher to fight, or only splat launcher as a get off me tool. And the other thing I wanted to do is I wanted to give Bomb Launcher a bit more defined weakness, and it kind of already has one, which is that it's vulnerable when throwing them. So that one was a simple solution. I just made the hitbox bigger. So when you use Bomb Launcher Deluxe, you have a bit of a bigger hitbox. It's like Inkjet, basically. And then the other downside was the 3 seconds. So basically, when you're on a bomb, it'll start counting down 3 seconds. And when 3 seconds are expired of you being on that bomb, you can't use it anymore. So I think that gets rid of the spam. I think it gives you more weaknesses, and it gives you more options. I think this is the special that's probably still the best one, though. Even with that, I think it still might be the best of these 3. It's kind of hard to tell. What makes me think it might not be is because a lot of the specials here would counter bombs. EMP would counter bombs, or, sorry, Sonic Wave would counter bombs. Big Bubbler would counter bombs. Inkjet could ignore bombs really easily. Either the Booyah or Strike, whichever I included, could counter bombs, and Stamp could counter bombs. That's the one thing that makes me iffy on this position. If this existed and a lot of bomb countering specials didn't, I think it would be the best. But because there's a fair amount of specials that countered bombs, which was an intentional thing I put in, I think that makes it more balanced. So I think this special is very easy to counter with other specials. So it's very easy to have 1 or 2 specials in your comp that could counter the Bomb Rush. So with that in mind, I think it ends up being balanced. And the last of the top tiers is Moab. So this special is basically a weaker Booyah that has a secondary effect. So yes, as a panic button, this special is now trash, because all the weapon classes that couldn't shred it before, now can. So you're not anywhere near as invulnerable as you would normally be in Splatoon 2. Like, you can't just panic it against a roller and live anymore, for example. So I think that's good. The second thing is you can't stall. And that's the main thing that's abused higher up, which is basically booyahing, sitting in the sky, holding it over a drop. It's obnoxious. You can still do it, but you can effectively do it for around 6 seconds. And even that is worse, because your armor would decay. But once the armor breaks after 7 seconds, any charger or splatling, you're dead. You can't. So it's very, very situational now. Or even like other specials, for example. Like Trizuka could snipe you out of the sky. Crab Tank could snipe you out of the sky. Like anything. So it's a lot harder to stall for longer, which I think is fair. However, I think the buffs are still important. I don't think they're as major, but the ability to globally give people speed and resistance buffs, even if only for 3 seconds, and even though it gives you away, is really important. And the thing that makes this, like, the one advantage it has over Ink Armor giving everyone away is it's optional. Like, if you have a 10 attack who's sharking in a corner, and you booyah, you can give the buffs to 2 people, and that T-Tech can avoid booyahing, so that he hides, and he can flank in while everyone else pushes with the buffs. And you have a booyah to displace people. That being said, that could get a little predictable. I think people could realize, like, oh, this person isn't booyahing. He doesn't want buffs. He's probably hiding. So, like, it has some counterplay, but I still think this is incredibly good in coordinated play. I think if this is not in coordinated play, it's, like, down here. You get a little bit of displacement and meh survivability tool. Like, it goes down. But if you coordinate and the buffs happen, I think it goes up here. Okay, let me pull up my... I forgot what specials I were to rank for less, but I think you guys can agree with me. But I think those are the top tiers pretty definitively. Like, I think that's what I would consider the best. Where is my list? Not organizing my stuff moment. Okay. So, we talked about the best. Let's take a small detour and let's talk about the worst. Strike. So, don't get me wrong. This new Strike is still pretty solid. Like, Splat 1 Strike could still do things, even with those specials. And likewise, I think this Strike can still do things. But that being said, I don't think it's that useful. Like, it's very minor displacement, paint that you can easily paint over even with the larger radius. And even if you target one person, like, you have to know where they are ahead of time. Or else, like, they could be somewhere entirely random. Like, you can target someone, but you have to have other information to know where they are, and even then, you're just using the special on one player. So, also, I'm not gonna make the argument about being outclassed by MOA, because like with the video itself, if this exists, this does not exist. If this exists, this does not exist. So there's no outclassed argument, at least. If these existed in the same game, there would be like 1% reason to use this in the first place. Like, it would be entirely outclassed. I'm not gonna lie about it. And the other one is the Bomb Launcher Deluxe. The one with the curling, auto, and the others. So, I think this Bomb Launcher is still okay. But like with Ink Strike, I think it's very situational. The difference between this and bad Splatoon 2 specials is I think it does actually have situations where you would want this. Like, you could use a special to move you out of a bad situation. You could use it to scout for other players. Or you could use it to completely unink a wall really fast with a squeegee. Stuff like that. Because, you know, it can walk around, it has a bit of time, so... I think that this still has use. It is just more situational. Like, I wouldn't want any more than one of these in a comp at any given time. So, that's the worst ones. The tier above that is 2 Splatoon 3 specials. So I'm gonna make some assumptions when ranking these, because we don't know as much about them. Even if Trizooka has a really long duration, like 9 seconds or so, I think it would go here. But I don't think it's gonna be that long. And without that longer duration, as powerful as it is, you still only have 3 shots. And I think it's just okay with that. Like, it's good. It's still really nice in the right situations. You can get a lot of value. But I think a lot of the other aggressive specials can do more or give you more options. Zuka is still very grounded. You still have to have pain around you. You still are very slow, and you only have limited shots. Likewise, Well 5.1 is displacement, but only in a small lane. So this is another, like, if it's a cramped map, this would go up. But for general non-garbage-ass maps that are open and have more area to move, the worse this becomes. I think it's still good to push with it, like, obviously, but I wouldn't rank it as strong. That's just my personal, like, take on the matter. So matching these is the one that a lot of my community thought this, or not community tab, a lot of my YouTube comments thought this one was really good, and I gotta be honest, I think I actually made this really not that good. So, Sonic Wave, the EMP one. Like, yes, this disables specials. But A, you have to be close enough to them. B, you have to not die from the amount of startup lag it has. C, you have to not die after you use it because you're still kind of stuck. And all that has to be done preemptively. If they pop their specials first, like if they see you deploying it and react in time and pop like a pack, a Zuka, etc., they get those specials. I am not a full-time content creator. But yeah, so I think you have to use it very preemptively. It requires a lot of planning, but mainly is the vulnerability. Like, 50 frames to start up, 30 of which before it even activates, and it doesn't go through walls. This is not the hardest thing to avoid. You would have to, like, shark, wait for a drop, and then pop it. And even if you do, the other team can just turn around and shoot you, which might be worth it if your team's really coordinated to capitalize on it. Excuse me. But I don't think it's as good. So basically, I think this thing, while it has really good strengths, I think it's very situational and has a good amount of weaknesses. Still very good, but not as good. And I'm gonna put Rally here. So I debated Rally between A and S a lot. I think Rally is the hardest one for me to form an opinion. Obviously, all of these opinions are like, okay, we haven't played the actual game, a lot could be different. But I can still get a general idea of how good I think things will be. This special's a fucking nightmare to rank. Because it's so fucking different. There's nothing to base it off. Like, Trizooka I can somewhat base off Zuka. Like, Whale 5.1 I can somewhat base off Whale. Even stuff like Sonic Wave I can base off of the EMP and Overwatch it exists on, or Surfboard based off, like, Inkbrush roll speed. Like, a lot of these specials have some form of basis, and this just fucking doesn't. So, I think it could be anywhere between these two tiers, but I'm gonna put it in A. I think it requires very good coordination. In solo, I think it's a good special as well, of course, because, I mean, solo, you can be more aggressive. You just use this, and then you hold forward, and you go for kills, and then you trade, and you get benefits from said trade. Pretty simple. But the more coordinated you get, I think the harder it is to get value from. There's still a lot of things you can do, like, using it to fake out specials, trying to do a preemptive push to burn things, using it over and over and jumping to beacons. But I think it is still very situational. Ink armor is better. I wouldn't really compare it to armor. That's the thing. Like, I can't compare it to anything. Because armor is an enabler special. Like, it strictly gives you an advantage in the fight. This doesn't. You get no fight advantages. So it's entirely different in terms of how you would play around it. Like, armor wants to be chained with a lot of other specials. This doesn't. Because the main benefit of this is you pop it, you die, and you barely lose any of your special, especially if you're stacking Special Saber. So it's like the complete opposite. Armor wants to be coordinated with as many things as possible, and this doesn't. This wants to be used with very little specials. So, I mean, I could talk about this special for a while, but I think it's just, you have to build very specific strategies. Like, you have to have a goal in mind for how you want to use this special. Like, I want to use this over and over. Like, we have 2 or 3 people with Rally, and we're going to chain 3 of them in a row and play really aggressive, and we have a ball point to set up beacons. Like, that's our strategy. That's what we're playing off of. But, you know, that's something you have to realize ahead of time. I think you have to have a very set strategy, and I just got rid of my chat. Nice job. So I think if you have that, it's fine, but it's just very hard, I think. You have to have a really good plan in mind. Or else this could just be wasted, or it can make your fight worse. So weapon booster. I'm gonna put it in here and just say depends. So, here's the thing about weapon booster. The effects are different for every weapon. So this could become, like, with actual MPU, this would be its own tier list. If it were to be a thing in the game, like, all the weapon effects it has and how good they are would be their own fucking added onto this list. I think some of these concepts are up here. Like, I think the best concepts for this are S+, like the E-liter charge, the 96 with no RNG. But some of them, like the arrow with the larger ink tank, are probably in B, where it's much more of a situational effect. Like, still good. Still usable, but I wouldn't want a lot of them. But yeah, you can use it when your team gets to try. That's not, like, yeah, you can use it as, like, a safety net special. But anyway, this is, like, I think, sorry, not C. Honestly, why do I even have C tier? I don't think anything's gonna go here, but whatever. Anyway, I think it's very dependent on the weapon. The other thing I heard from my YouTube comments, which I should have considered, is there's, like, 1 super weapon per class. Which I think could work, like 1 spray shooter, 1 normal shooter, 1 blaster, 1 umbrella, would probably be, if they were to make that a thing, this kind of special a thing, that's probably what they would do. It would still be hard to make, but it would be much more doable than 1 for every single weapon that they put it on. So, I think it's everywhere between B and S+, basically. That's how good I think it is, if it's between B and S+. I guess I'll call it that. It's between B and S+. I don't think any of the effects that I gave would be the same as these 3 specials in terms of power. Arrow with 0 jump RNG would be like an S. It still wouldn't even be that high. I think you can have... I think an arrow with 0 jump RNG would even be balanced in the game if they toned down its paint. Okay. So S tier. This is a hard one to make, but we can start with Stamp. So this is very similar to Splat 2 Stamp. You have the bounce throw, so obviously you get more poking power with the throw. The bigger protection hitbox basically makes it reliable from the front. But I think this also just has the same weaknesses as base Stamp, which is the throw mode is still slow, even with it being a bit faster. You can still just shoot it from the sides. Or if it has to, like, swing again to pick up speed, you can move out of the way. I think it's just much better at actually blocking stuff. Like, I think it'll be very hard for things to shoot in front of it and kill it in this version, which is good. And I think the throw has way more pressure. So I think this is much better. But I think it's still situational. I'm very torn between A and S for this, but there's so many, like... Dude, I just watched Anger's Stamp in this game, and he convinces me base Splatoon 2 Stamp is just better than it actually is. And that is just carried over here to where, like, okay, if Anger can do good with Stamp in this game and make it look better than it is, then this one is probably better than where I think it is, so it's probably S and not A. So I'll give it S. Fuck it. Zipcaster. So Zipcaster, I think people have very skewed opinions on, because I think a lot of people are thinking only how you use it, like if it was a splash, like you dive straight into an opponent. And I think, honestly, maybe sometimes it'll be used like that, but I think most of the time Zipcaster is going to be used entirely differently. I think it's going to be a positioning thing, like you Zipcast somewhere to stand and apply pressure for something like a charger. Or you want to Zipcast more stealthily, and then flank that charger without making it super obvious. Because if you Zipcast right towards someone, I think you're just gonna die. Like, if Zipcast was only that linear as it looked in the trailer, I think it would be A. Because I think it'd be predictable and punishable. But I think using it to reposition more, or to, like, help people out in fights and stuff, I think would be much better in terms of what you can do with it. So I think that makes it an S tier. I think it's more the variety of ways you can use it is what puts it up here. But it's still very predictable, it's still very linear, and you still have a punishable recall. Swordfish Swarm! So this special is very fucking hard. Like, I think if Swordfish Swarm didn't have the melee option I gave it, I think this would easily be the hardest special in the game. 2 small hitboxes to hit in a row with throws, and you only have 7 shots, unless if you get a kill or assist. And, like, you could do the bigger hitbox, but that's your whole special. So it's like... I think that's way difficult. That being said, good players will, like, snipe people with throwing knives. That'll be kind of insane. It also gives away some of your stealth, but I don't think that's as big a deal. The weakness that I heard some people being upset about is that it only paints your feet. And, like, that would be too weak. But I don't think it is. That's the point. Like, this is supposed to be a special that you can't paint with when you use. Like, that's supposed to be its unique weakness compared to other specials. Is it does not fucking paint at all. Like, just a small amount on your feet is all you get. And I think that's part of what makes it special. I think if you're good with the special, it does a lot, and I think the melee mode keeps it from being too non-beginner friendly. But at the same time, you can see the location, you can just not peek the special. Like, unlike Trizuka, it has no AoE. So just not peeking it would be good, and it doesn't have that much range. So I think that's important. And then S+ tier would be these 3. Bubbler Shield kind of does things no other special does. As a protection special, it's really good for being in the right positions, and it seems like it'll be very hard to break. Crab Tank has a ton of variety and usefulness. Like, you get mobility, you get protection with HP, you have an AoE firing mode and a normal fire mode. There's so much versatility in Crab that it's very hard for it not to be useful in any situation. That's what I said in my analysis. And then Inkjet. Also, we can... You're gone away. So, Inkjet. I debated Inkjet being from S or S+, because it is still very vulnerable. However, I think it's also important to note, there's a lot less stuff that protects against Inkjet. The higher damage will mean you can actually break Moab, it will actually do damage to Bubbler Shield. So, like, you can actually use it and deal significant damage to things. So that matters. And the mobility option just has so much use. It's fast, you can chain it, it just eats your duration, but you have so much movement options. So you're not as protected, but neither are the opponents. And with more damage, I think the stuff that does protect them doesn't protect them as well. So while I originally had this here, I think I would move it up. So, I mean, obviously you could call me biased here, but I think these specials are very balanced. I don't think any of these are that broken. Like, maybe this would need specific speed adjustments. Like, maybe it'd need to be a little slower. I'm not sure. But that's it. Like, that's the only adjustment I can make. As for the weapons down here, the specials down here, I don't think you can make them that much better, to be honest. Like, if you give more duration to this, it becomes kind of spammy, but maybe you could do 8 instead of 7 seconds. And Strike, like, what the fuck are you gonna do to this thing to make it good without being obnoxious? What are you gonna do? If you give multiple strikes, it's obnoxious and it's way too much displacement. If it's a larger strike, it's obnoxious in certain positions. What can you do? It's kind of hard. And I guess that's why I like Moab better. Like, if I were to go with the special concepts as a whole, Strike would not exist. I would probably go with Moab. But I know there's some people who would like Strike more. Some core things that I kept in mind is displacement specials. I said there would be limited displacement, and there is. There's either Moab/Strike, that's one. Bomb launcher, but you're still vulnerable when using it. Technically all of these are. So there's bomb launcher, you could argue. There's Killer Whale. And that's it. I feel like I'm forgetting something. Yeah, no. Whale, Moab or Strike, and bomb launchers. And the normal bomb launcher. That's it. That's all there really is. Everything else is kind of an enabler. There is still one other special that hurts the other team, which is EMP, or Sonic Wave. But it doesn't force people to move at all. Crab isn't about forcing other people to move out of the way. Like, Crab is about picks. Technically, yeah, like, technically all these aggressive specials force displacement. But they're much more stuff you can fight and fight back, and they more play to get value in other ways. Like, Booyah is very strictly displacement. No, I do not think 10 missiles are going to be in Splatoon 3. I think that trailer was ahead of time, and I wouldn't put them in the game, which is why they're not here. I would not put missiles in 3. So, I mean, that would be my ranking here. I think all of these would still be fairly balanced. I wish these could get buffed a little bit more, and Surfboard might need a little bit of nerfs. But outside of that, I think this would be fairly well balanced with the original concepts. I would like to see with some time if, Sonic Wave could get a little bit of buffs, because I would like Sonic Wave to be up here, but I think I made it a little bit too weak. But at the same time, I don't want to buff it without it being theoretically playtested, because it could also be up here anyway. But that's like, I would want to move this a little bit, and maybe this a little bit. Like, I would want to move these two specials up a little bit, maybe. And then maybe knock this a little bit, but not a tier. And then if someone finds a fucking way to make these an A, then I would like these to go up a tier and B tier not to exist. And this is fine. So yeah, this was a fun little concept thing, you know? Huge shoutouts to Luna as always for making the fucking art for all of these. Like, helped get these to life, so you know, that's fucking awesome. And I had a lot of fun with this. You know, I had a lot of fun with this. I think this kind of forced me outside of the box. I'm not a very creative person. And I got to, you know, work with and create new stuff. So, there you go. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments if you're watching live.